Hello and welcome to this week's episode. I'm super excited. I can never say I'm not because every person is VIP, but I am super excited. I have Georgie Dent. She's the CEO of the Parenthood, Australia's leading parent advocacy organisation representing over 80,000 parents, carers and supporters. In the Parenthood, she champions paid parental leave, access to quality early childhood education and care, and family-friendly workplaces. And we really deep dived into this because she's so passionate about it. She's a mum herself. She lives in Sydney. They are really trying to advocate for parents to be able to have children and not have the biggest worry and concern about the finances, that the government can help with really good early childhood education and extending the parental leave, and how important it is that a parent stays home with their child for as long as possible. Of course, in this day and age and new age living and how expensive life is, it's a little bit challenging. So it was really wonderful and exciting to meet her and talk through everything with her. She's also a best-selling author, former lawyer. Yeah, very excited to have this conversation about policies and really what she's trying to present to the government in regards to supporting parents. She also is a regular media commentator, and she's been on The Project, The Today Show, ABC Weekend Breakfast. So she's really trying to share this news to get out there and get parents to be part of it so that she can help them with all of this and more. So I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as we did. And I'd love to hear your comments and feedback. Have a great week and we'll speak to you soon. Bye. Georgie, welcome to the Parenting Collective podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm very excited. Thank you for your time. You're a very busy lady, which we're going to talk about, and I'm so happy to have you here today. What I'd like for you to share to our listeners is a little bit about yourself. I know that you're a mum of 3, and not just what you do, because we'll definitely deep dive into that, but who you are as a mum, as a human, and I'd love to hear a little bit about your world and what's going on now, really.
Yeah, thank you. So, yes, I mean, the headline is, my job title is I'm CEO of the Parenthood. We've got 3 girls. My husband and I, we live here in Sydney. We've got 2 girls in high school. Our youngest is in primary school. And, life is pretty busy. There is rarely a dull moment. And I think the thing that still blows my mind about our eldest is about to turn 16. So we've been on this parenting journey for a long time. And I think what I'm always struck by is how often it changes. So with each child at different ages, different stages, there are different challenges. And I'm just always reminded that you never reach a point where you're like, okay, got this, we're on autopilot. You might get there for small, snippets of time, but I think that's the kind of lesson I keep learning. And I think that's why, I do think that parenting and raising children and trying to be the calm, regulated
Mother.
parent and mother, it's a really big undertaking. I find it's a really difficult thing to do when you want to do it well.
Oh, we all do. And, I'm not sure if you know much about my history, my past. I have 3 girls. I call it my beautiful chaos. I think you called it something chaos as well. But when I was reading all of your stuff and I was like, so mine are 20, 18 and 14. So we went through it,
Yes.
And what you're explaining is you're being the best mum you can. And I think that what happens, well, I know what happens is we want to love, give, be besties with them, but not be besties, But what happens is with the growth of the independence, which happens, 12, 13, it changes, like you said, and then it gets a little bit frustrating. What it's all about is regulation, which is not always easy, especially with a woman like yourself who is doing incredible things outside of being a mum, and then to have enough in your tank and you just think, oh, I can't wait to see my girls, and someone's in a bad mood because they've had a crappy day, and you've got to not be offended by that. Do you find that a little bit?
Oh, yes, definitely. And I think also what I have found about this stage, so particularly with teenagers, is that you can't fix everybody's challenges and problems. And that's really difficult. And it does make me yearn for the days when we had little children and you could sort of tuck them into bed at night at 7 o'clock and feed them their dinner, put their pajamas on. And it was sort of obviously when you've got small children, it is a different type of relentless.
Yes, but it's
chaos.
we talk about this, it's age appropriate chaos. And it was, especially 3 girls and 3 kids. But this is a whole, you lose, I don't want to use the word control because that's such a word, but you
Yes.
do lose that, oh, mummy, no worries, mum, or a few tantrums here and there. It like changes so dramatically.
Yes.
You
And
lose that, you know.
I think also in another way, their lives are more contained into the family unit and the household. Whereas now, obviously, the kids are all at school, they've got their own activities, they've got their own friendships, and there is, and navigating that when you are inclined, as I am, to make everyone be okay, it's really difficult to recognize that actually my role is not to fix everything, but it is to be here consistently showing up in a loving way,
I know.
but not being able to jump in and fix all of the problems all the time.
Yeah. And that's a bit of co-regulation for myself. I've talked about this a little bit because to my listeners is my eldest daughter suffered from really bad mental illness. And, you know, you really want to fix it then. And with one of that, we went to family counselling, which then led me to become a conscious parenting coach because it's just, I don't know if you've heard about conscious parenting, but it really is all we're talking about and us, you know, trying to regulate ourselves and stuff like that. But in one of the family counselling sessions, that one of the daughters went, stop caring so much. And my heart was like, you know, like stabbed in the heart. But really on reflection for that, and I did take it on board, is I was trying to fix too much. I was trying to interfere. And, you know, it's so hard as a mum and it doesn't change, does it? That you just, when they're hurting, you want to, like you said, tuck them into bed still and, you know, send them off to sleep. But
Yes.
hard when they're struggling.
Yeah, it really is. And I think what I would say is I don't know very many families, if any families, that have got multiple children where you don't encounter something along the way that is tricky.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's surrendering to that fact. Because again, you sort of want this, we don't, but kind of this picket white fence narrative of like everyone's happy and going to school and loves to learn and so proud of your mum because you're working, but it doesn't work like that, does it?
No.
No. So the more that we surrender and share this is why I love getting my guests on to share our real stories, because you're doing amazing things in the world and you're a mum, which is, for me, I always say, I totally love what I do, but my role as a mother is the most important and will be for as long as I'm here, you know?
Yeah. And I think the thing is, there is an inherent level of mess and chaos and love and imperfection and emotions that happen with parenting and home life that is unlike any other proposition. I know a lot of people can relate to this, that sometimes the work challenges feel so easy compared to the home challenges.
They do, because they're just part of your heart and soul, really. Really, no matter how brave we are and co-regulated we might be, it literally, like I'm still, you know, every day, how should I respond to that? Pause, Donna. Maybe just send a little gift in there, you know, like it's constant. And you think that, yeah, like you said, you have the windows of like, well, we've got this. Doesn't last for long, sorry, everybody. Not in a bad way. We're all learning all the time. This is our first journey here on earth, like I said. And then you've got, like I always say, and you've got kids that are all different personalities. So you can't parent the same, can you?
No. And that's the thing. I mean, I would say, I mean, obviously, we've got 3 children. They've always wanted to play that game. Who's your favorite child? And my honest answer is always, I genuinely don't have a favorite child. But what I can say for certain is that at different times, each of the girls has been presenting the most amount of difficulty. But the honest truth is, it is swings and roundabouts, because we have had different highs and lows with each of our kids. And it's so funny because when you're in one, you think that the other two, it's like, okay, right, this is where we're at. And then it shifts. So those moments of feeling like you've got it are fleeting. And there is something liberating about accepting that, the good and the bad, that if this is terrible, that is also fleeting. If it's excellent, that is probably also fleeting.
Totally. Look at us, wise women. And because I work with families from 0 to 10 in regards to sleep, and with my conscious parenting, I'll be working with, you know, preteens and teens and stuff like that. But that's what I always say, even when we've got newborns, is like, just day by day, enjoy it when it's a great day, look at the glimmers, and tomorrow's a new day. And really staying in the now as much as you can. And you can dislike some situations that are happening with your family, but it's also, you're not going to stay there. Same with, like you said, the fleeting, oh, this is fleeting. And enjoy it when it's here, though, like, oh, this is a really great day.
Yes.
It's working out really well. So really glad to hear that you're keeping it real as well.
Trying. Oh, I mean, Yes, yes.
So thank you for sharing that part of your world, which is one of the biggest parts, isn't it? So now I want to sort of deep dive into the parenthood and about being parents in Australia these days. There's so much we can talk around this, but really wanting to allow parents to be heard of what's going on, because everyone's struggling. I find like everyone's struggling in their own ways. My question would be what it's like to be a parent in Australia in today's society, and simply like the cost of living, having to go back to work. I know you've done lots of work on that as a voice for the parents around that. So yeah, do you want to start sort of talking a little bit about that, because you're a very big advocate to talk about supporting our families here?
Yeah. So the Parenthood, we are an independent, not-for-profit advocacy organisation, and we represent over 80,000 parents and carers nationally.
That's amazing.
And our mission is ambitious, and it is to make Australia the best place in the world to be a parent and raise a child.
I love that.
And so that's what we are striving for. And we are specifically striving for that through a couple of sort of key policy changes that would make a really meaningful difference in the lives of parents and children, particularly in the early years.
Okay.
But when you say, where are parents now? Like, what is happening? The truth is that parents in Australia at the moment are under unprecedented pressure.
Yeah.
Financially, logistically, emotionally. I saw something the other day and it went viral on Instagram because it captured what so many households feel. And that is that parents today are working harder with often two parents in full-time work to try and attain a quality of life that families used to be able to do on one income.
I know.
And it's true. Like, we have to recognize that backdrop, the cost of housing. Obviously we know it's more expensive in metropolitan capital cities, but it's actually really expensive in regional and rural areas as well. We do live in a world now where it is much harder for parents to have extended periods out of the paid workforce. That then means you've got, logistically, your life is very different to what it might have been, because you cannot reliably assume there's someone at home who can absorb all of the caring and work that is required when you're raising a family. So things like the school day being, 9 till 3, that doesn't really align with very many work days. School holidays, if you're lucky, you might have 4 weeks of annual leave, but school holidays are 12 weeks minimum a year. And I got a message last week from a parent who just said to me, her and her husband both earn good wages. After their average mortgage and 2 kids in childcare, they literally have nothing left. And she's like, we feel like we are working harder than we possibly can. We're barely keeping our heads above water, and our life is really hard. And so that's the sort of the financial reality is hard. What that then means for the logistical reality of lots of families trying to actually, how do we care for our children and raise our children while also being able to provide for our children? But then the other aspect that we're seeing is there's been a really significant shift in the presentation of complexities in children, in behaviour.
Oh, definitely. And they need more support from their parents. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you've got parents who are trying to parent with more information than ever before, and very high expectations from society as well as from individuals.
You're talking my talk.
And we've got a cohort of children who are presenting with greater difficulties, whether it's behavioural, emotional, and you've got parents that are more time poor than ever before, that are financially stressed. And so, I often point to the US Surgeon General gave a speech 2 years ago where he basically said parental mental health is a public health crisis, because we know the well-being of children is inextricably linked with the well-being of their primary caregivers. If parents' mental health is eroded, that has an impact. And that impact goes well beyond just the individual household and individual children. And we have to look collectively at what is driving the incredible stress on parents and families, and what can we do about it to try and ease some of that. And at the Parenthood, we are very focused on the sort of systemic collective pressure on families.
Yeah. So what would that mean with the support from the Parenthood?
So we campaign for 12 months of paid parental leave at a replacement wage rate that can be shared between parents.
Wow, that's amazing.
we know that. So in Australia at the moment, from the 1st of July, families will have access to 26 weeks of paid parental leave from the government at the minimum wage with superannuation on top of that. So
Wow.
we've gone from 18 weeks to 26 weeks and we've had the inclusion of superannuation. But
Okay, good.
if you think about the OECD countries,
Mhm.
the average length of paid parental leave that families have access to is 53 weeks. It's about 40 of the most developed economies in the world.
So it wouldn't be
it's-
America though, would it?
Yes, America is the only country,
Oh.
but 53 weeks is the average length. So you've
Okay.
got countries that have got more than that. America hasn't got any. Other than that,
We've got 26.
we've
That's what
got 26 weeks at the minimum wage. So
That's right.
why we campaign for this change is that paid parental leave is critically important health policy, but it's also social and economic policy because
Absolutely.
we know that giving birth is the most radical transformation that occurs in life.
Sure.
We need parents, particularly mothers in that, when they give birth, they need time to recover. They need time to bond. They need time to learn the ropes.
Mhm.
And we actually really need to be encouraging where there are two parents. We want both parents to have the opportunity to be engaged.
Yeah.
When both parents are supported, and particularly in that first year of life, we see children's outcomes. Babies do very well when they're able to be supported at home.
Yeah.
The mental health of both parents improves when both parents are supported to share the care.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a no-brainer, really. I mean, it's you're so correct. It's amazing what you are doing and campaigning for, but it's just such simple human biology. Our kids need their parents, or
It is.
mums. Like I'm not gender specific there, but the research shows that they need their mum.
The World Health Organization has been saying for literally 40 years, probably 50 years actually, since the 1970s, about how important it is for mothers to have at least 26 weeks of parental leave. But you've also got to then put this into context of, as I said, it's really hard for households to get by comfortably or just keep their head above water on one salary. So when previously it might have been possible for mum to step away from the paid workforce for a chunk of time without it being a sort of crushing financial stress, that's not the case anymore. So it means that paid parental leave is even more important because families need the ability to step out of the paid workforce when they're having babies.
Absolutely.
We need to recognize that it's not a sort of private endeavor. It's something that is valuable to all of society. And you will always have people say, you know what, if you have babies, you pay for them. But
It's not the world we live in now, though,
it's not.
It's so great that everybody says that, but I'm like, it's not the world we live in now.
The birth rate has dropped so significantly, and part of that is because of the economic challenges that households, it's much harder. And what we know is the birth rate has dropped, but it's not because all parents are sort of freely choosing that they don't want to have children or they want to have fewer children. A lot of parents are saying they want more, but they can't afford it.
Yeah, totally.
And
I get that.
we all stand to benefit from having a well-supported, healthy population.
Totally.
And so when I talk about sort of systemic levers, 12 months of paid parental leave at a replacement wage rate, it differs in different countries, but it usually looks like something like 75% of your wage up to a particular cap. But it just is saying to families, we've got you. You're going to step away and you're going to bring a baby into the world. And we see that as something that is so important and valuable. It needs to be paid.
Sure.
And then when you support, so we would love if we had 12 months of paid parental leave, we would love a portion of that to be, available on a sort of use it or lose it basis, in particular to dads. Because say that was 12 weeks that families can only get if the dad takes it.
Okay.
And what that does is it sets families up to more equitably share the care and the paid work. So you see.
And moving forward too, really, isn't it?
Yeah, because the caregiving pattern that is set in the first year of a child's life persists.
Yeah.
So if you had a scenario where mum takes 12 months off and dad only takes a week off when a baby's born, you can see that proportion of care being replicated over the family's life history. And that has a really significant impact on mothers, not just in terms of what they're able to do. When we put those expectations on mothers in particular to be everything when it comes to the caregiving, it's an unsustainable load.
Oh, I see it all the
on
time.
all fronts. So it's, and as you said, a lot of the time we are seeing mums return to the paid workforce, and they often are working at senior levels. They are doing big hours, but then they're also holding the sort of lion's share of responsibility for the households running.
Yeah.
And that's not sustainable.
It's not. And
So-
the thing, everything's changed. And, you've got a 16-year-old, so, I don't know how long you were able to stay home or wanted to or whatever. But even, so my 15-year-old, I could stay home. I was still staying home. Now, everything was cheaper. My husband had a physio practice, but building it up, but we could do it back then. But now you just couldn't. We talk about it all the time. Like, there's no way, there's just no way. Like, people would have to have 2 wages now. And it's just rapidly changing. Like, even so I've been in the parent industry for over 10 years now. And that, oh my gosh, like 4 years, 3, it's just rapidly changing. And society has these expectations, but everything's changed and people are burning out and exhausted and not enjoying parenting, and they're not enjoying their work and not enjoying life. And it's just so much pressure.
Yeah. And so what I often say is that we haven't invested in the infrastructure to underpin the new world we live in. So we don't live in the world that we used to live in, where you easily have time out of the paid workforce and still have a mortgage or still pay the rent. That's not where we live anymore.
No, it's not.
And yet we haven't invested. So I describe paid parental leave as and early childhood education and care as the sort of roads and bridges that parents and families need in order to move between the work and care their families need.
Yeah.
And so, we campaigned for 12 months of paid parental leave. We wanted at a replacement wage rate. We really want to engage and encourage dads to take extended leave as well.
Yeah.
And then we want for families to have access to totally affordable, high quality early childhood education and care that is near where they live. It's simple. It doesn't cost the equivalent of a second mortgage.
Yes. So look, wow with what you're trying to campaign for. So realistically then, can you just sort of explain to us and listeners and myself how you're doing that? Like, obviously that sounds amazing and would so benefit the future and future families and mental health and, oh my gosh, and all the things that I'm seeing. Can you I know, again, that's a really open question, but how do you do that? How are you campaigning? I think somewhere you see that you've got a seat at political forums and media, but really down the nitty gritty, how do you do that?
Yeah, it's a very good question.
Yeah.
So the Parenthood was set up in 2013. I've been the CEO for it'll be 6 years in May.
Right.
And I was on the board of the organisation for a year before that. I was a volunteer on the board. And basically, when we were set up in 2013, the idea was, let's mobilise parents to have a voice on these sort of key issues that impact them, knowing that parents are so time poor. They are just trying to get by. They don't have time to build huge campaigns and get out there and protest and demand change. So the Parenthood was set up to do that and sort of be a voice for parents. And so what we've done over the last 13 years is build a community of engaged parents online. We try and we do research. So we've done research to sort of underpin, like, what are the policy proposals that we've got? Why do we believe they're right? What would they cost? What would the benefit be? So we've got research, and then we do things like get media for that. We say, this is what we've put to the government. We put in submissions, so to Senate inquiries, to Treasury for the budget submissions. We bring parents to Canberra. We've had round tables where we bring politicians in. We have done that a couple of times with the Prime Minister. We actually did that when he was opposition leader. And we really try and sell the message to as many parents and decision makers and media that raising a family is so much harder than it needs to be. And it is not because individual parents are getting it wrong or making the wrong choices. It's because we haven't invested in the support they need to just get by.
Right.
So I'm really on a mission to sell that story that our current systems are not working well enough and we need to change them. So that's sort of what we do. And we try and bang on the door of anyone in Parliament who will listen to us, any media that will take us, and really let parents know it is possible to do this differently, because other countries have, and we need to. If we want to have a sustainable population and we want families to be able to thrive, we need to make these investments.
Oh, totally. So when a parent hears this podcast episode, do you have memberships? Are they just part of the forum? Like, I'm sure everyone listening will be, oh my gosh, this sounds amazing. How can I sign up or help out, have a voice? Where would they go? What do they do? I mean, obviously, social media and stuff, but is there things like forums and things they could be part of?
Yes. So joining is as simple as sort of finding our website, theparenthood.org.au, and signing up. So that means you'll join our email list, and then you will hear from us when there are opportunities to have a particular say on different issues. We have got a survey out at the moment, and in that survey, we specifically say if there's a role you'd like to play, as a case study in the media, in social media, like, get in touch. And we've got a lot of responses to that, which is excellent. And now we're kind of working with those parents to translate them into stories to share. But yeah, follow us on social media, join the email list. I mean, the thing is, at the moment, if we were to deliver on our vision for paid parental leave and early childhood education and care, we would not be solving every problem facing every household. But we would be totally lifting the baseline for how families can get by. And we know, the evidence is so clear that when you make these investments, there is an economic benefit long term and in the short term, but also the benefits that you get from children and parents being well and well supported far exceeds the cost upfront of making the investment.
I always think about the butterfly effect. I'm sure everyone's heard about that. Just one small change in I don't know what a whole lot of butterflies are called. I can't remember, and it affects everyone around the world. And I look when you're talking, and I just I love your passion and what you're doing, and it will work. I know it will. What I'm also seeing, toddlers and bigger kids that are dysregulated, that then they're looking at getting diagnosed, but they're actually not got anything wrong with them because they're tired. They are annoyed because they don't care, mum and dad have to go to work. Then parents feel guilt. It's just this ongoing thing. Then the teachers are under pressure. So there are obviously huge increase in, diagnosis. Doesn't mean that it's new. It's just that this is happening. And I have ADD, my children have ADD. I grew up in the country riding horses with no pressure. Right. So when I came out into the world is when my ADD started going, oh gosh. And I can reflect back on that because I wasn't properly diagnosed till my 40s. But what I look at and reflect back with my kids is if I had to go to work, especially one of the girls, I talk about this all the time, who was a very sensitive kiddo, but would really lovely, happy kiddo. But when she gets stressed, she get really tantrumy and angry, and took a long time to settle down. And if I had to make her go to daycare every day or whatever, she would have been one of those kids that would have been really hard to regulate. And it's not anyone's fault, blame, shame, or anything like that. But what you're doing is allowing the parent to be there for slowing the process down, because our kids are not wanting to be rushed. They're not wanting to do this stuff, and they don't know any different, but we have to survive. No guilt or shame for anyone doing whatever. Also, there's parents that want to go back to work. That's fine. But on the other end, like I say, when I work with my families, just slow down. So if the kids are going to daycare, don't be rushing it when they come home, slow everything down, because everything's so fast paced. They go to India and they're supposed to be learning to write their names, and some kids aren't ready and they're just forced to do it. So it's like so many things happening. But then, like you said, this new age infrastructure that you're trying to create is going to support all of that.
Well, and just give families a little bit more breathing space. So
Breathing.
we think about the paid parental leave. That is ultimately about giving families the opportunity to pause and take a breath and breathe.
Mhm.
And then when I talk about sort of high quality early childhood education and care that's totally affordable, we don't want families to be on this hamster wheel feeling like they've got to work full time and they can barely even afford the childcare. And they're rushing every minute of the day. We would love for early education and care to be high quality and totally affordable so that it takes pressure off the family budget. And then the other thing, the third sort of policy pillar that we're really keen on pursuing is parents having access to family-friendly workplaces that value caregiving, that don't look at it as a burden on productivity. And again, we're talking about building an ecosystem where parents feel a little bit held in those early years, that if they need, that they've got that opportunity to stay home, they don't have to go back to work before they're ready. When they do go back to work, if they know there is a high quality early education care setting that's in their local area that is staffed by professionally paid and qualified educators and teachers. And then they know that if and when they're going back to work, they have got flexibility, they have got understanding. And, in a lot of Nordic countries or even in Germany, for example, it's really common in the early years for both parents to maybe work 4 days a week and the children to be in early education and care 3 days a week. So they each have a day at home.
Yeah.
All of those arrangements are not really supported here in Australia at the moment because we haven't got the adequate paid parental leave. We've got early education care that is prohibitively expensive and not always accessible and not always high quality. And then we've got too many workplaces that are genuinely unaccommodating of parents.
Absolutely. Yep. All of that. All of it, So, yeah, everything you're advocating for is actually quite specific. And there's not lots and lots of things, but it's very specific and what's needed.
They're really big things.
Yeah, they are big.
So they're big.
But they all work together to create a future where it takes that stress off, to enjoy a year, to take their time, the high end care. So when you're putting your child into that care, that you can go in and have that time and enjoy going to, maybe, I don't know.
Well, and it's also one of the other things when we were talking at the beginning about the challenges that parents are facing. We also know that one of the other things that's changed is that fewer families have got a sort of village around them. So because more people are working and grandparents are working longer, it is less common to have a network around you when you really need it. And again, having decent paid parental leave that everyone can have access to, and then having high quality early education and care in communities, it creates a little bit of social infrastructure for families. It means there's going to be more parents at the park with their babies. If everyone had access to 12 months off, if then, and I know this because when early education and care works well at the moment, and certainly in my family's experience, one in particular that we used when we ended up moving, and it was kind of where all three girls ended up going through and finishing, it was part of our village. We don't have, both of our parents live outside of Sydney. It was on the street that we lived on. So the families and the educators and teachers, they genuinely were part of our
beautiful
village.
Yeah. And that doesn't really happen anymore.
No, but when it does happen,
it's beautiful.
The benefits are so significant.
Oh, it's so beautiful. It's a village, it's a community. So we talk about all the time, in the fast-paced world and all the information online, it's an overload, but really we need that human understanding and care for you, care for your child, you care for them, and getting back to that for sure. Village. So beautiful. Also, before we finish up, I really wanted to ask also, so amazing stuff, and I can't wait for everyone to hear our podcast about that, because to support everything that you're doing is amazing and very, very much needed. And just flipping on to more of a personal, to finish off, personal question. You have a book that you've authored. It's called Breaking Badly. and it's a memoir of your life, and it talks about the time that you were 23 and had a nervous breakdown. I would really love to hear a little bit of what happened in your life for that to happen so young. I can probably guess you were busy, 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 but yeah, just talking into that and sharing that experience with us, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I was at boarding school in Brisbane and did uni in Brisbane. I was always I was definitely an anxious type, but I certainly wasn't sort of formally diagnosed and I wasn't medicated.
worry.
But I was an anxious type and I was also very hard on myself. I really wanted to do very well. I didn't come from a family where I had immense pressure on me. But
You
I
had pressure on
put
yourself.
a lot of pressure on myself. And when I was 19, I was diagnosed with two conditions. So one of them was endometriosis and another one was Crohn's disease. And I hadn't heard of either of these things, but I was quite unwell. I was in a lot of pain. And I was diagnosed with both of these conditions. And I sort of, because I was at uni and I was doing law and business.
Oh, wow, that's a lot too.
Yeah, but because I was studying, I had a bit more autonomy. You know, when you're at uni, you can hide a little bit. So I was able to kind of see my doctors, have all of the procedures I needed to have. None of it was pleasant. But when I moved to Sydney for my first, so I graduated from uni and then I moved to Sydney for my first sort of full-time legal role. And I was a graduate at one of the big law firms down here. I'd worked for the same firm in Brisbane like a couple of days a week as a sort of clerk, which is a very common thing that law students do. And when I moved down here and started full-time work, my health just deteriorated. And because I was working full-time, I actually couldn't hide. And so I spent 18 months really just basically falling apart. And then it came to a head one night. I fell over in my office with this horrible vertigo attack. And then that was basically, for the next 4 months, I wasn't able to sort of function properly. I ended up moving back in with my mum and dad in Lismore. So my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, we were living together, but in this tiny sort of 25 square meter apartment. And I needed someone to look after me and he was still studying. So I moved back home with my parents and we sort of went on this medical merry-go-round trying to work out what was wrong with me. And I ended up in a psychiatric hospital, which was exactly where I needed to be. I was diagnosed with anxiety. And I described that experience as sort of like taking a car to a mechanic and like you lift the bonnet. And I lifted the bonnet and I was sort of, in my head, when everything was falling apart, and it was a very difficult time, I just kept thinking, I don't understand how I've got here. Like I'm such a straighty 180. I've done all the good things. I've tried to tick all of these boxes.
Yeah.
And yet when I got into rehab and sort of lifted the lid, I was like, how have I not broken earlier?
I was just about to say that. How much strength, like poor you, that you carried that in your mind literally your whole life anyway, and that you still pushed on through till your body started falling apart. So your mind would have just been in overdrive for all of that time.
It was. And I think one of the things that I really identified when I was in rehab was that when I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease and endometriosis, but particularly Crohn's, I've really internalized that as a sort of personal deficiency.
Really?
Like there was sort of something.
Not autoimmune?
Yes, it is. None of this is rational.
Help it. No, that's okay.
But
none of it's
it
rational.
sort of felt to me like I hated having to have sick days when I would have when I'd have to go to hospital or like have procedures. I hated having to say, "Oh, I'll need the day off."
Yeah.
And so I did internalize this. So it's not really surprising that I fell apart. And I don't recommend it, but I did learn a lot from that experience. And I've written a book about that. So that was my pre-advocacy life. And then after that, I ended up getting into journalism, which I'd always been interested in. And I became a business reporter. And that was when I really started looking at the men and women. I had just grown up very optimistic, thinking gender equity was sorted.
Oh, that's lovely.
And then I realized it wasn't. And then when we had our own family and started having children, I was looking at these things like, okay, so paid parental leave and childcare are nightmares. For 10 years, I sort of wrote and reported.
Oh, wow.
And that's kind of how I've ended up in the role that I have today.
Meant to be. Don't know if you believe in that, but I do. And the more I believe in meant to be, and the thing is, I've been through a lot of traumatic stuff too. And on the other side of it, I'm like, and at times you think, especially when you're younger, at 23, you think this is not fair. But as you get older, you like absolutely could look back and it's the pieces of the puzzle to where you are now, you know, like even the breakdown and the personality that you were and the worry and that was actually anxiety, and that, you know, awfully your body broke down, but it had to. Otherwise, it sounded like you probably wouldn't have stopped.
No, I definitely wouldn't have. And look, I definitely believe that, you know, when I was 19, if I was going to map out my life, I don't think I would have got here, but I think this is exactly where I was meant to be.
Totally. If I had a crystal ball, I probably would have run away to a forest somewhere and lived in the forest of berries, honestly. But now it's good, but it's all lived experience. And I think where you're at with you and what you've explained just today, all of your lived experience from that to gender equality, to having three girls that are probably all very different like mine, all of the things, all the lovely experiences of life have led you to be able to be an advocate so strongly in this space, which is what's needed.
Yeah. And I think that I do just have this sense of injustice for families. I really do. And I knew that when I always have felt the injustice around gender inequity, but when we were living it, and I was like, and I've always known I have got a lot of privileges. I am a very privileged person. But when we were doing it, I was like, this is so hard. And this is why for so many families, they can't do it. And I am so driven by this sense that we have to do this better.
I love that.
And so that's very motivating.
It is. I love that. And we can end on that. We could talk all day, but I do love everything you're doing. And I'm so glad that I found you. Instagram. And it's so interesting because, you know, you're doing so much for families and advocate all this beautiful stuff. And I didn't even know you existed. You wouldn't have known I existed either. And then I find someone like yourself and I'm like, wow, I have to get them on my podcast to share. Because, you know, the more voice you've got out there anywhere, the more people can hear. You never know who's going to hear this and think, oh, this is really good. They might even be in a government position. They might be able to help you. You just don't know.
That would be excellent. And it is really delightful to have met you and to be on here. And I definitely know the Parenthood does amazing work, but we definitely have an opportunity to connect with more parents. Because when I do meet people that haven't, you know, our amazing ops manager, MJ, she had a corporate job, but she's got 3 kids and she applied for a job with us. And it was really only when she started with us that she was like, I cannot believe there's an organization that does this, because she said when their kids were little, she and her husband were just like, how does anyone do this? Like trying to juggle work and care. And so I always have her in my mind.
Yeah, when all of my kids, there was no help with that, no parental leave at all. So we just, again, it was easier back then to go without. You could just do that. No one traveled. We had older cars, you know, like life is just so different. But again, it's not anyone else's fault. I'm not saying about traveling in cars. I'm just saying it was very much easier to be able to do that, to go without, where just normal survival for food and paying bills and electricity is hard enough these days, you know, like blown anything else. Yeah. Thank you so much, Georgie. I'm very honoured, and I know how busy you are, so I'm very grateful for your time. And we'll put everything in the show notes for people to find you. And thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me.
No worries. Take care. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
So if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave me a rating and review. I love reading all of your messages, so shoot me a DM over on Instagram. It is parentingcollective.au. I also offer a free 15-minute no-obligation phone chat. If you'd like to book one, head over to my website, www.parentingcollective.com.au, and request one there. So try to remember to be kind to yourself and always know you're doing the best you can every day, no matter what your day is looking like. Until next time, much love.